Okay, so let's start off our introductory lesson today from an article called From Access to International English, America's Cultural Role in the World Today. And I think this is out of Norway. It's a uh, it's a pretty good overview of American popular culture, as well as a critique of America's influence through pop culture in the world today. So we're going to kind of break this down section by section. And the article starts off like this. It says, America plus culture. Many people in the world believe these two words do not really belong together. The stereotype of the clueless and uncultured American runs deep, and it's not just abroad. It is part of American culture itself, a kind of in your face pride at being down to earth and everyday. The common man and woman with common taste have been celebrated in America since its independence. At the same time, the sophisticated and highfalutin tastes of the upper class have been viewed with satire and disdain. Well, yeah, this is true, but this particular uh, sentence really uh, starts in England and then through history becomes part of American culture. So the English for many, many years have been very much making fun of sophisticated, high-end society, including its kings and queens for a couple of centuries. So America just brought that, or kind of inherited that through its English colonies. Okay, so that is why it is a bit of a paradox that American culture has become the world's most widespread and influential today. Indeed, it has become so powerful and ever present that some fear it may actually damage their own cultural identities. And this is true also. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Uh, Especially the French uh, really took care to make sure that their own culture wasn't swallowed up by this new wave of American popular culture. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Okay, so the article continues on and it says uh, the basis for the impact is, of course, America's position as the world's dominant superpower. Not only does the USA have hard power, the ability to get people to do what it wants, it also has enormous soft power, the ability to get people to want what it does. It was not always so. Before the 20th century, America was viewed as a cultural backwater. And we talked about this in our literature class, how from the Revolutionary War time up until the industrial time of the late 1800s, America hadn't changed much at all. Okay, so uh, the article goes on to say at that time, the American dream was USA's greatest cultural export to the world, an open ended inspiration into which millions poured their own dreams and hopes for a better life. And we talked about that at length too. Sometimes that was a very difficult transition, especially for those first generation immigrants coming to America. This was not an easy transition to make. However, the next few generations after that kind of melted into American society, and they had as much opportunity as any American. Okay, it was around the time of the First World War that things began to change. That America first began to export some of its homegrown culture abroad through films and music. Charlie Chaplin and westerns, ragtime, and jazz became familiar to millions outside of the country. It was not until after the Second World War, however, that the floodgates really burst. The rise of the consumer economy and the American lifestyle in the 1950s had a terrific impact on the world when American popular culture went global. Okay, so that's the first couple paragraphs, and let me make a few comments about that. First, Charlie Chaplin, an American silent movie star, comedian. His movie silent films back then. Uh, his movies went all around the world, and we have a video clip, a short clip of one of his little part of a silent movie, kind of showing it's black and white, silent, okay, but it just shows who Charlie Chaplin was and kind of a taste of his movie style. And then the article kind of talks about really America's culture started to disseminate across the world um, back after World War II. So one of those products was Coca-Cola, and that's an interesting story in itself, and we'll get into that a little later. But what happened after World War II is American military uh, personnel came back to the States, and um, the government offered these soldiers returning money to start families. And so what they did was they took land that was in between the city and the agricultural land. And they started to develop these kind of tract houses, homes, uh, very inexpensive. You could get a mortgage very easily as a ex-military personnel. So um, even in the world today, I can tell you that when I was in South Korea, what we find is you have the urban area, and then on the outskirts of the city is a real stark division line. After that is farmland. So what America did is kind of took up some of that farmland and put these housing developments in strictly residential. No industry was allowed. That had its own section, sometimes within the city or outside. Uh, and it was kind of a buffer zone, I guess you could call it, between the city, urban, and rural countryside. So this started what was called Suburbia. And we have a quick video that talks about suburbia during the 1950s. This is where it gets started. So Along with that comes the American supermarket. Now, before, when you went shopping, there may have been in an urban area, there may have been an area, kind of a farmer market type of thing, where you would have your produce sold by one person. You'd have to go to a different store to get your meat. You went to a different store to buy your other goods. And what America did is it took all of these small grocery items and put them under one roof. And Suburbia kind of demanded that because they were, again, outside the urban area, and they kind of had to bring the food source to those suburban development population. So that was the birth kind of the American supermarket, kind of putting all of those necessary items under one roof. So I can remember as a kid going shopping with my mother. Let's see, my dad was paid on a Friday, so they'd take their check or their cash, and Friday night was shopping night. And I go with my mother to kind of help her with the shopping, buying groceries for the week. And of course, very similar to today, you had the carriages and the aisles, and you'd go and you'd pick your food. Something that was developed that by consumer demand was cellophane wrapping of your meat and your vegetables and fruits wrapped in cellophane. This, of course, cost grocery stores extra money to do, but consumers liked it, and they were willing to pay a little more to get everything wrapped up in this cellophane. So, I'd be pushing the cart and helping my mother lift the different products and put them in the cart. And we'd have the list, of course, and check off the list and look for sale prices, all of that sort of thing. And you'd go up to the counter, to the clerk, and he'd have a cash register and kind of a long table, but it wasn't mechanical like it is today, where it kind of brings the groceries down to be scanned. No, no. You just kind of put them on the counter and move them down to the clerk. Now, the clerk he was so quintessential. He always had a pencil in his ear, and he'd take his pencil out and he'd grab a brown paper shopping bag. And as each item was processed, he'd write the price down on the bag. So that, let's say my mother bought 35 different products, he'd have a list of 35 different prices, draw a line, and he would add them all up, through the old long-handed arithmetic, come up with the total price, always circle it. Your bag was your receipt. And then on the cash register, he would put the total amount of the sale into the cash register. So there wasn't any kind of mathematical calculation in cash registers back then. It could only record the one-time input of totals. And so you would go home, and then, it was a big deal to load up the car and bring the groceries home and unpacking and put them in the pantry and all of that sort of thing. So that was kind of the beginning of what supermarkets were back in the 50s and what shopping was like. And today we see this spread across the world, this idea of the supermarket. Okay, so take a look at those two videos on this slide. One with Charlie Chaplin and a very short introduction to suburbia in America and its roots. And we're going to talk about how that spread